I'm Alex, 32, and apparently still the walking wallet of my so-called family. You'd think that after all the years I spent climbing the corporate ladder, quietly grinding away while everyone else played the victim or the golden child, I'd at least get a seat at the table. But as I was about to find out, my seat was more of a bank transfer than a place setting. It started with a text from my mom 2 weeks ago. Simple, seemingly innocent, just a small family dinner, honey. Nothing big, just close relatives and a nice night in. We'd love to see you. Now, if you knew my family, you'd know this was strange. My mom doesn't just do anything, especially not when it involves me. Ever since I moved out at 22 and started making real money, I've mostly been treated like a resource instead of a son. They don't ask how I'm doing. They ask if I can help out. And it's always something. Car repairs for my brother, new appliances for my mom, a vacation emergency for my sister when her flights got canceled. Somehow, I always ended up footing the bill. Quietly, because deep down, I wanted to be included. Needed to believe I still mattered to them. I should have known better when they asked for my bonus check, just for safekeeping, last month. I'd earned a $9,800 year-end performance bonus, and while I never bragged about it, my mom somehow found out. She always does. Said something about using it to finally fix the upstairs AC unit, and promised to hold on to it until after taxes. I didn't love the idea, but I've been conditioned not to argue. Growing up, challenging her meant being frozen out, mocked, or guilt-tripped into submission. Old habits die hard, and new wounds take time to stop reopening. So I drove over last Saturday night, expecting an awkward meal in their too-warm dining room, maybe 10 people max, my mom, dad, sister, brother, and a couple aunts. I wore something simple, no expectations, just me showing up, like they always say I never do. But the second I turned onto the block, I knew something was off. Cars were lined up down the entire street. People I didn't recognize were milling around in the front yard, plastic cups in hand, laughing. Someone waved at me like they knew me, and a guy with a clipboard asked, "You with the Sophie party?" Sophie, my younger sister, pregnant, due in 2 months, and now apparently the star of some surprise bash that no one mentioned. When I stepped through the door, it hit me like a slap in the face. There were easily 90 people packed into the house, probably more. A DJ was set up in the living room, mixing 80s music into cheap club beats. There were folding tables covered in baby-themed cupcakes and gift bags, balloons strung across the ceiling, and, the kicker, a 12-foot banner draped across the back wall that read in glittery pink cursive, "Congratulations on the new baby, Sophie." I froze, just stood there like a complete fool, while people kept pushing past me with casseroles and wrapped boxes. I didn't even have time to speak before my mom came waltzing over, all smiles, holding a mimosa, and somehow managing to sound both casual and smug at the same time. "Oh good, you made it. I knew you'd come through." "Come through for what?" I asked, blinking, still trying to process the chaos around me. She laughed, light and fake. "The family dinner, just a bit bigger than planned, but you know how quickly these things grow when people want to celebrate." She gestured vaguely at the crowd. Sophie's been under so much stress, and everyone wanted to do something special. I didn't say anything. I was still stuck on the banner. Then I saw it. My bonus check. It was taped, literally taped, to the front of a large cardboard gift box near the center table, underneath a sign that read, "Thanks to Uncle Alex for sponsoring our special day." It wasn't even discreet. They'd made it the centerpiece. I stared at it for a full 5 seconds before turning to my mom. "Why is my check on that table?" She blinked at me, as if surprised by the question. "Oh, that. We figured it would go to better use this way. Everyone's so grateful. Really, you've made this night unforgettable." I laughed, out loud, not because it was funny, because if I didn't, I was going to lose it. "I gave that to you for taxes, Mom. For a house repair." "Well, this is technically a home event," she said, as if the logic made sense. "And your sister's baby is a family responsibility. You always say you want to help, right?" I didn't respond. I walked to the punch bowl, filled a cup with water, and quietly sipped it while every guest around me kept dancing, drinking, and treating me like a bank account with shoes. Then I spotted my dad. He was telling some old friend from work that I'd finally made himself useful. A direct quote. My brother, on the other hand, was leading a toast to me being the family sponsor. He even winked and said, "I knew his nerd job would pay off eventually." I nodded, still silent. I don't think any of them noticed when I slipped into the hallway, pulled out my phone, and logged into my accounts. First, payroll. I flagged the check as unauthorized and submitted a formal dispute through my company's HR platform. Since the funds hadn't cleared entirely due to the holiday weekend, I was able to recall the transaction. A brief call to our payroll manager, who owed me a favor, sealed it. Second, the venue. I noticed earlier that the catering tables had receipts from a party rental service, which I recognized as a company I'd once helped set up a business account for through my firm. I contacted their fraud department and flagged the transaction tied to the company card my mother still had on file from years ago. She must have assumed I wasn't tracking it anymore. She was wrong. Third, my personal credit card. It had been used, without my permission, to book the DJ and make a deposit on a baby shower decorator. I revoked access, froze the card, and disputed the charges. They were good about reversals when you filed within 24 hours. And finally, the big one, the deed. Because what no one in my family had ever asked or bothered to understand was that when I paid off the remaining mortgage on the house 2 years ago, I did it under one condition. The property was quietly transferred to me. Legally. Fully. I'd never intended to act on it, of course. I just wanted to make sure my parents were secure. But security isn't a gift when it's twisted into leverage. So that night, with the party thumping on behind me and my sister giggling through a baby-themed scavenger hunt, I unlocked the documents folder in my Dropbox, opened the PDF, printed one crisp copy, eviction notice, immediate review required, and I left it on my childhood bed, folded neatly under a company letterhead envelope, just in case they didn't believe it was real. I walked out without saying goodbye, drove home in silence, and waited for morning. Because the bank account freeze was only the first domino, and what they hadn't realized yet was that I hadn't even started. The first call came at 6:12 a.m. It was my mother. I didn't answer. The second was from my sister, then another from my brother, then 3 more from a blocked number, probably my dad, who always hides his caller ID when he's trying to act professional. I ignored them all. By 7:30 a.m., my inbox had 6 unread emails. 2 were automated fraud alerts from the venue and catering service, both transactions officially under dispute. One was a panicked message from my mom. "Alex, something's wrong with the bank. We can't access anything. Please call me." The last 3 were from my sister, all in rapid succession. "What did you do? The DJ says the payment bounced. I'm humiliated. You need to fix this right now. You ruined everything." It would have been funny if it weren't so predictable. At 8 a.m. on the dot, I got a message from my company's payroll system confirming that the bonus reversal was approved and reissued back to me. Funds would clear in 48 hours. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It wasn't about the money anymore, not really. It was about the principle, about years of being dismissed, used, laughed at, and expected to show up like some invisible servant just because I had less emotional baggage than everyone else. That had always been the excuse. I was too quiet, too distant, too cold. But I was never cold. I was exhausted. Exhausted from being the backup plan they never appreciated. Around 8:17 a.m., my phone buzzed again. This time, a FaceTime request from my mom. I watched it ring. Then I opened the banking app on my second phone and checked the joint emergency fund I'd set up in their name years ago. The same one I'd been contributing to every month like a dutiful idiot. I transferred the entire balance into my own personal account. Seconds later, a new text lit up my screen. "Mom, we can't get into the emergency account. Did you change something?" I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the front door to my apartment and picked up the delivery envelope that had just arrived, the one with the return receipt confirmation. The eviction notice had been officially filed. Now, before you come at me with pitchforks, let me explain. I wasn't planning to throw anyone on the street. That house wasn't just bricks and drywall. It was the stage where every insult had been thrown at me under the guise of jokes. The same walls that had heard them call me a failure when I didn't go into law, and later a sellout when I started making more than all of them combined. That house raised me and haunted me. And for 2 years, I had kept silent, even after paying every bill and sitting through every guilt trip, just so they'd feel like they still had the upper hand. Now, I wanted them to know what real power felt like. At 9:01 a.m., I got a call from Sophie. I didn't answer that one either, but she left a voicemail. "Are you serious, Alex? You're going to evict us? Because of one party? You're being psychotic. This is about more than money. This is family. Funny how family only matters when the money runs dry. I played the message twice, not because I needed to hear it, but because it confirmed what I already knew. They hadn't learned anything. Not a shred of remorse. Not even an apology. By 10 a.m., my parents had driven to my building. They buzzed every apartment trying to get in. My neighbor texted me a picture from the lobby. My mom pacing in heels, my dad red-faced, waving papers around and ranting to the doorman about entitlement and abandonment. The irony could have powered the entire block. I didn't go downstairs. I simply sent one email to the family group chat, the one I was only ever added back into when they needed something. I finally posted a message. You used me, lied to me, spent what wasn't yours, laughed behind my back and called it love. You crossed the line, and now you get to live with the consequences. I'll be by next week. Bring a lawyer. Then I muted the thread. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No tension in my shoulders. No tightness in my jaw. Just silence. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. Because 2 days later, I got an email from a name I hadn't seen in a long time. Aunt Danielle. My mom's estranged sister. The black sheep of the family. The one they'd all cut off 15 years ago because she wasn't like them. She had one line. You did what I never had the guts to. Let me know if you're ready to finish what they started. And that's when I realized the house wasn't the only thing I owned. I stared at Aunt Danielle's message for nearly 5 minutes. The words didn't fully register at first. It wasn't just the surprise of hearing from her. It was the timing, the tone, and the quiet understanding hidden between the lines. Danielle had always been the outcast. Growing up, my mother would scoff any time her name came up, usually followed by some dramatic story about how she stole from the family or burned every bridge she had. As a kid, I was told to stay away from her, that she was unstable, dangerous, selfish. But when I was 17, I found an old photo album in the attic. There were pictures of Danielle with me as a baby, holding me, reading to me, kissing my forehead. I didn't understand then, but now I knew what exile looked like. I wrote back, simple and cautious. You've got my attention. She replied within 10 minutes. I know things. And I kept proof. I didn't come forward because I thought maybe they'd change. They didn't. But if you're ready to tear it down, I can help you light the match. It felt surreal, like a door I hadn't even noticed was finally opening. I asked for a call. She sent a number. We spoke that night. And everything shifted. Turns out, my mom and dad had done more than just emotionally drain their children. They'd misused family trust funds. Funds that were supposed to be divided between siblings and cousins for college or housing or emergencies. Instead, my parents rerouted the money through temporary loans that were never paid back. Danielle had uncovered it years ago. She tried to confront them. They retaliated, gaslighting her, spreading lies, cutting her off entirely. She had emails, paperwork, bank transfers, all dated, all organized, all quietly stored on a hard drive she'd kept hidden in a fireproof box. She was ready to testify. Meanwhile, back in Dysfunctionville, my family was panicking. The house had gone quiet. No group chats, no calls, just one vague text from my dad. We need to talk. You're overreacting. Let's be reasonable. Reasonable. That word rolled around in my head like a joke that never stopped punching. Let's recap what reasonable looked like from their side. Withholding information about a giant party. Spending my money without consent. Using my bonus check as a public prop. Booking an event on a corporate card I never authorized them to still have. And acting like I was the one who needed to calm down. Reasonable, apparently, meant obedient. The eviction clock was ticking, and I had made sure all notices were legally airtight. It wasn't an emotional tantrum. It was a calculated step in a chain reaction they started. I even offered them the chance to meet, but only if they agreed to sit down with a neutral mediator. They declined. My sister, Sophie, sent a voice message instead. You're ruining your niece's future before she's even born. Do you have any idea what stress does to a pregnant woman? But you don't care, right? Because you don't love anyone but yourself. I didn't reply, but I saved it. Aunt Danielle and I met in person 3 days later at a neutral cafe downtown. She was older than I remembered, silver streaks in her once dark hair, but her eyes were sharp. Everything about her felt grounded, like someone who had been through fire and come out harder than steel. She slid a flash drive across the table. This is everything. She didn't ask what I planned to do with it. She just said, they act like you're crazy because they're terrified of who you'd be if you stopped apologizing. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt understood. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, emails, and hushed conversations with a lawyer I trusted. He reviewed Danielle's files and told me I had enough to open a formal case, one that could freeze additional assets, bring an investigation into the trust account, and potentially get restitution for every dollar misused. But even that wasn't the part that felt most satisfying. It was seeing their world shrink. I got a ping from my building's security app, a motion alert at 2:13 a.m. It was my brother, standing in front of the entrance door, drunk, yelling into the intercom system. "You think you're some genius? Huh? You think you're better than us now? You're nothing, Alex. You'll always be nothing." He pounded on the glass. Security escorted him away. I didn't report it. Not yet. But I had the footage saved. Let them feel cornered. Let them twist in the silence. Because the part they never understood, the part they refused to see, was that I didn't want revenge for the sake of it. I wanted closure. I wanted them to admit what they'd done, to say sorry, to look me in the eyes without the smirk or the sarcasm and admit they were wrong. But they never would. So I would take what they never gave, the last word. And then I'd tear down the very stage they built their fake little family show on. But just before I could, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived. Mailed. Handwritten. No return address. I opened it, scanned the first line, and froze. "Dear Alex, I know you probably hate me, but before you go through with this, there's something you need to know about what really happened to the trust fund. Your father lied to all of us, including your mother." I read the letter 3 times. Slowly, carefully. My heart was pounding by the second paragraph. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't even my sister. The real orchestrator behind the missing trust fund, the hush money, and the backdoor financial decisions was my father. The letter was signed, J.M. At first, it didn't click. Then I remembered. Joseph Martin, Dad's old friend. His best man at the wedding. The one I hadn't seen since I was a kid. The one who moved away for work around the same time Aunt Danielle got disowned and my college fund mysteriously vanished. I called Aunt Danielle. Read her the letter word for word. By the end, she was silent. Then she said, "I knew he was involved. I just didn't think he'd ever confess." The letter detailed everything. Years ago, Joseph and my father had set up a dummy investment firm. On paper, it looked like a high-yield account for the family trust, but in reality, it funneled money into personal accounts. Vacations, credit card debt, renovations, even Sophie's private school. There was a line in the letter that hit me hardest. "Your mother never saw the paperwork." He told her the trust dissolved during the recession. She believed him. I did too for a while. But when I found out the truth, I tried to walk away. He made sure I couldn't. It explained the sudden rift in their friendship. Joseph never moved away for work. He left to avoid being dragged further down with my father's schemes. And now? Now he had cancer. Stage 4. No family left. Nothing to lose. So he mailed me everything. Copies of transfers, screenshots of account statements, even a recorded phone call with my dad from 2011 where he admitted to borrowing from the trust and never paying it back. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in that too quiet apartment and felt hollow. It wasn't vindication. It was confirmation. Confirmation that the man who had raised me, the one who mocked my ambition, humiliated me at dinners, and told me I was lucky to be part of the family at all, wasn't just cruel. He was a fraud. I called my lawyer the next day. We updated the case file. With Joseph's letter and recordings, we had enough to pursue formal legal action, civil fraud, financial misconduct, and potential criminal charges if we chose to escalate. But I didn't start there. No, first, I invited them over. All of them. My mom, my dad, Sophie, my brother. I told them I had something important to share. I made it sound like an olive branch. Said I wanted to make peace. They arrived 2 nights later. My mom brought a pie, like we were playing house. My dad wore that smug grin he always did when he thought he was winning. Sophie didn't make eye contact. My brother came in late, still smelling like liquor. I waited until they were all seated. Then I pulled out the flash drive and plugged it into the TV. At first, it was spreadsheets, transfer receipts. They barely flinched. Then the call played. My father's voice. "It's not stealing, Joe. It's just family money. We'll put it back eventually." Then laughter. Then numbers. Then a joke about how Alex would never notice. The room went still. My mother turned to him slowly. "What is this?" My dad didn't answer. I stood up. "This," I said calmly, "is your retirement plan falling apart. And that deed you thought you still had claim to? It's been mine for 2 years. The party? The bonus? The mortgage? I paid for all of it. Quietly, while you laughed at me. My dad stood, trying to recover. This is insane. That's taken out of context. You can't just. I held up my hand. I can. And I already did. I handed my mom a folder. Inside was the eviction notice, a list of flagged transactions, and a statement from my lawyer confirming that proceedings were underway. There was also a post-it with one line. Your next house should be one you can afford on your own. Sophie burst into tears. My brother swore and stormed out. My dad stared at the folder, face pale. My mom just looked at me. Not angry, not heartbroken, just tired. Why didn't you come to me? She whispered. You never listened, I replied. And I stopped begging a long time ago. They left in silence. No hugs, no fake promises. That was the last time I saw any of them in person. 2 months passed. The legal case progressed faster than expected. My father tried to fight, of course, claimed the documents were forged, that the call was fake. But it didn't matter. The bank records, the emails, the sheer amount of corroborating evidence was undeniable. He lost. The court ruled in favor of financial restitution. Aunt Danielle's portion of the trust was restored in full. Mine too, with damages. He was fined, publicly humiliated, and formally stripped of any claim to the estate. Sophie and my brother were not charged, but they were subpoenaed as witnesses. And the house. I sold it, not out of spite, but because I didn't want to be haunted by the memories. I used part of the money to buy a smaller place, somewhere quiet, with a view of the lake. I even offered Danielle a guest room anytime she wanted it. We talk weekly now. As for the rest of the family, they tried, of course. A letter from Sophie, an email from my mom. All variations of the same theme. We didn't know. We were misled. Can't we move on? I read them. I didn't reply, because moving on doesn't mean returning to the scene of the crime. It means building something new, something that isn't built on silence and sacrifice. And I was done being the family's secret foundation. They made their choices, and I finally made mine. I chose me.